She never used to question him. The idea of doubt felt foreign, almost rude, like breaking something delicate that had taken years to build. For a long time, she believed in their quiet routines, the morning coffee, the shared smiles, the comfortable silences that filled their evenings. That love can disguise a lot when you want it to. And sometimes it takes only one wrong glance to make everything unravel. It started with something small. He came home later than usual, claiming traffic had been worse than ever. She believed him, until she noticed his shirt smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't his. Not hers either. A scent too sweet, too deliberate. She wanted to forget it, but the thought followed her like an echo. Over the next few weeks, other details began to stack up: the messages he checked when he thought she wasn't looking, the new password on his phone, the careful way he changed the subject whenever she asked simple questions. There was nothing obvious, nothing she could accuse him of, yet everything about him began to feel rehearsed. At night, when the house settled into its slow rhythm of creaks and sighs, she would stare at the ceiling and replay every small lie she'd caught. Her heart told her to stop searching for trouble, but her instincts whispered, he's hiding something. One Saturday afternoon, while folding laundry, she found a strange receipt in his jacket pocket purchased from a hardware store 2 towns away. A hidden lock, a motion sensor. He hadn't told her about either. When she asked, he smiled and said it was for work. That smile was polite, confident and empty. That night she sat by the window long after he fell asleep. The moonlight traced the lines of his face, peaceful and familiar, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was looking at a stranger. She had 2 choices: confront him and risk denial, or find out the truth quietly. She chose the second. The next morning, while he showered, she searched online for a hidden camera, something small, discreet and easy to use. It arrived 3 days later in a plain brown box, the kind that makes secrets feel heavier than they are. When she opened it, the tiny lens gleamed up at her like an unblinking eye. She waited until nightfall. The air was cool, the house silent. He was asleep upstairs, his breathing steady and deep. She crept into his study, a place he'd started keeping locked lately, and placed the camera high on the bookshelf, behind a framed picture from their wedding day. From there, it had a clear view of his desk and the laptop he never let her touch. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the angle. For a moment she almost pulled it down. But curiosity is a powerful thing. It doesn't whisper, it insists. She left it there, blinking once as it came to life. The following day passed in tense silence. He left for work as usual, kissed her on the cheek, and told her he'd be late. She smiled back like she believed him. The moment he left, she sat down and watched the live feed from the camera. For hours, nothing happened, just an empty room. By nightfall, she began to wonder if she'd gone too far. But at midnight, the door opened. He entered quietly, like a man sneaking into his own life. He sat at the desk, opened the laptop, and spoke softly on the phone. His voice was low, deliberate. She couldn't make out every word, but fragments reached her: numbers, names, and something about keeping it quiet. It didn't sound like business. It sounded like a deal. She froze, listening. When he ended the call, he opened a folder on his computer. The light from the screen flickered across his face, sharpening every feature into something hard, unfamiliar. He smiled, not kindly, but the way someone smiles when they think no one can see them. The recording lasted an hour. When it ended, she sat in the dark, staring at her reflection in the screen. Her hands were cold, her throat tight. The man she married was hiding something serious. But what frightened her more wasn't the content of the call. It was how calm he looked while lying to her every day. For the next few days, she acted normal. She cooked his favorite meals, asked about work, even laughed at his small jokes. Inside, she was memorizing every word, every shift in tone, every place he went without explanation. Her heart still hoped for a misunderstanding. Her mind knew better. Then, one evening, he left his laptop open by accident. She didn't mean to look, but temptation has its own gravity. She approached slowly, the screen still glowing faintly. A folder sat open: financial documents, transfers, bank accounts she didn't recognize. Some were in her name, others weren't. She felt her pulse rise. Her own identity used, copied, buried under false numbers. He wasn't just hiding secrets. He was building a wall around himself, using her trust as bricks. When he came home that night, she smiled as always. But something inside her had shifted. She wasn't the quiet, uncertain woman searching for proof anymore. She had it. And now, she needed to decide what to do with it. He leaned down, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "You're quiet tonight." She smiled. Just tired. But her eyes lingered on him, not with love, but with the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. That night, while he slept, she sat by the desk again. The hidden camera watched from behind the wedding photo, capturing her face instead, steady, determined, unreadable. She whispered softly, as if to the lens itself. "If love made me blind," she said, "then maybe the truth will help me see." And somewhere inside, beneath the heartbreak, she began to plan. Subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and tell us where you are watching from. Morning light slipped through the curtains, soft and golden, but it didn't feel warm. The house seemed quieter than usual, as if even the walls were listening. He was already gone, leaving behind the usual coffee mug, half finished, a tie draped across the chair, and the faint smell of aftershave in the air. To anyone else, it was ordinary. To her, it was a pattern one that now looked like a disguise. She made her own coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam as it curled upward. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, felt sharper, more deliberate. Somewhere between love and suspicion, she'd crossed into a place she couldn't return from. The truth had changed her. She just hadn't decided what to do with it yet. That afternoon, while he was at work, she played back the recordings again. His voice filled the room, low and controlled, like someone speaking through a mask. This time she caught more details. A name, Marcus. A number, a location. He wasn't hiding an affair, he was hiding money, transactions made in her name, maybe even debts she didn't know about. The realization didn't make her angry. It made her cold. She began to write things down. Dates, times, numbers, names. The pages filled quickly. Her handwriting looked calm, but her hands trembled slightly. It wasn't fear anymore. It was anticipation. She wasn't chasing the truth now. She was building a case. By evening, she'd gone through his laptop again. The files were encrypted, but she didn't need to open them to understand what was happening. Each document name was a clue, short labels that meant nothing to outsiders, but everything to someone who knew how careful he was. Transfer _1. Account _02. Cover. Hold. It was a system, methodical and quiet. He'd been moving money for months, maybe years. And she realized something cruel but clear. He had never intended to let her find out. When he looked at her, he wasn't looking at his wife, he was looking at a convenient alibi. That night, she cooked dinner as always. He smiled, told her she looked beautiful. She thanked him. She asked about his day, about work, about friends he hadn't mentioned in years. Each question was a line cast into the dark. He answered easily, not realizing she was comparing every word to the recordings in her mind. When he said he'd been at the office, she remembered the timestamp showing him somewhere else entirely. When he said he was tired, she remembered the energy in his voice when he whispered to Marcus. And when he told her he loved her, she felt nothing. Words meant nothing when the silence between them was louder. Later, when he went to bed, She sat in the living room with the camera feed on her phone. Watching the empty study had become a strange ritual, one that made her feel both powerful and trapped. But tonight she wanted more than observation. She wanted evidence. She placed a second camera, smaller this time, near the hallway. Another in the garage. It was like setting chess pieces, each move calculated. Quiet. She didn't want confrontation. She wanted to understand how far his deception went before she struck. 2 nights later, she got her answer. He came home late again, around midnight. She pretended to be asleep, breathing evenly as he moved through the bedroom. He changed clothes quietly, but not quietly, enough for her to miss the sound of metal clinking against the drawer. When he left again, she waited 10 minutes, then got up. The garage was dark and cold. The light from her phone barely reached the far wall. His car was there, but the trunk was slightly open. She lifted it, heart hammering. Inside was a locked briefcase. For a moment, she stood frozen. Then she closed the trunk, walked back to the house, and stared at herself in the hallway mirror. Her reflection looked calm, but her eyes were sharp, almost unfamiliar. She realized then that she was no longer the woman who waited for answers. She was the one creating them. The next morning, she pretended nothing had happened. She smiled, packed his lunch, and kissed him goodbye. The moment he left, she went straight to the garage. The lock on the briefcase wasn't simple, but she was patient. When it finally clicked open, her stomach turned. Inside were stacks of documents, bank forms, fake IDs, and several passports. One had her picture on it, but not her name. She sat on the floor, staring at it. This wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. He'd built an entire identity for her, one she didn't know existed. Maybe it was insurance. Maybe it was a backup plan. But either way, it meant one thing: he was planning for a future without her. When she closed the briefcase, she was no longer afraid. She knew what she had to do. For the next week, she gathered proof. Every file, every recording, every document copied, labeled, hidden. She bought a small flash drive and stored everything on it. Then she made 2 duplicates, hiding them in different places around the house. It wasn't about trust anymore. It was about survival. He noticed her calmness, but mistook it for affection. "You seem happier," he said one night, wrapping an arm around her. She smiled faintly. "I guess I just stopped worrying." He kissed her forehead, whispering how much he loved her. His voice sounded distant, almost rehearsed. She wondered if he realized he was speaking to the woman who could destroy him with a single click. The tension between them shifted. It wasn't love or fear, it was theater. Both of them pretending, both waiting for the other to make a mistake. The difference was, only one of them knew the script had changed. Then came the call that confirmed everything. He was in the study again, unaware the camera was still recording. "It's done," he said softly into the phone. "She doesn't suspect a thing. I'll move the last file tonight." Her chest tightened. The last file, what did that mean? She watched as he packed the briefcase again, this time adding an envelope and a small drive. When he left the study, she copied the footage, labeled it "Final Night," and saved it beside all the others. She didn't sleep. Not that night, not the next. The weight of what she knew pressed against her chest like a secret that might explode if she spoke too soon. But she wouldn't act out of rage. She would wait, plan, and strike cleanly. The morning of his next trip, she handed him his briefcase with a smile. "Be safe," she said. He kissed her cheek. "Always a.m." When the door closed behind him, she exhaled slowly. Then she picked up her phone and made a single call to someone who could help her make the truth impossible to ignore. Her voice didn't shake. "I have something you'll want to see," she said. "And a story you won't believe." As she hung up, sunlight poured across the kitchen counter. For the first time in months, it felt warm again. The trap was set. And this time, she wasn't the one being watched. The morning felt too still, like the house was holding its breath. She woke early, long before the alarm, and sat by the window watching light creep slowly across the garden. Every detail of the day ahead was already decided. The calls had been made. The files backed up, the truth sealed inside small metal drives scattered like silent witnesses. All she had to do now was wait. He left just after sunrise, suitcase in hand, the same gentle smile that used to mean safety now feeling like a mask. "Don't wait up," he said softly. "I won't," she answered and meant it. When the car disappeared down the road, she exhaled slowly. For months she had lived in tension, pretending, smiling, listening. Now the pretending was done. She walked to studied the room that had hidden his lies and turned on the laptop one last time. Every file she'd copied was still there, lined up neatly on the screen. Each one a confession he never meant to give. She stared at the wedding photo above the desk, the one hiding the tiny camera that had seen everything. Their smiles looked genuine, untouched by deceit. She reached up, removed the frame, and set it face down. The lens blinked once, reflecting a spark of morning light. She uploaded the final video, the one labeled "Final Night," to a private cloud folder, attaching the rest of the evidence. Then she wrote a short message. Greater than, "You'll want to see this. He's been laundering funds under multiple names, including mine. This is proof." She sent it to 2 addresses. One to the investigator who'd agreed to meet her, and another to an anonymous tip line, connected to his company's internal review board. It was the kind of message that would ripple quietly through his world, pulling at every thread he tried to hide. When she closed the laptop, the house was silent again. A strange calm settled over her, not relief, not triumph, just a quiet acceptance that something enormous had ended. By afternoon, the first calls began. Unknown numbers. Private lines. She didn't answer any of them. She simply listened, as the phone vibrated against the table, each buzz like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable. When he finally called, his voice was sharp, almost breaking. "What did you do?" She didn't raise her voice. "I told the truth. You don't know what you've started," he said. There was panic now, a kind she'd never heard from him before. "Yes," she said softly. "I do." He went silent. Then the line went dead. She set the phone down, feeling neither victory nor regret. There was only stillness. Hours later, his car pulled into the driveway. The sound of the engine was rough, uneven, like the rhythm of a heart too fast for its own good. She watched through the window as he sat there for a long time, head bowed. Then he came inside. He looked different, tired, cornered, stripped of his confidence. The man who once hid behind calm logic now looked small in the doorway of his own house. "What did you send them?" he demanded. "Everything," she replied simply. He stepped closer, eyes wide. "You don't understand, this isn't just about money. You've ruined everything." She studied him quietly. "You ruined it the moment you decided I was easier to use than to love." He stopped then, realizing there was nothing left to argue. His anger faded into something hollow. He turned away, muttering words she didn't need to hear. She walked past him to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and spoke without looking back. "They'll find out what you've done. You can tell your version, but mine comes with proof." He didn't answer. When she finally turned, he was gone, just the echo of footsteps, a door slamming, and silence settling back over everything. The house felt larger now, emptier but lighter, as if it had been holding its breath along with her. She sat down at the table, sipping water that had already turned warm. For the first time in months, she wasn't pretending. By nightfall, the news broke. A quiet investigation exposed his dealings. His company suspended him. Accounts were frozen. His name began to unravel in whispers, spreading fast, unstoppable. She didn't smile when she read the headlines. She just turned off her phone and sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock. The sound of an ordinary life returning. Days passed, then weeks. Papers were signed, lawyers called, formal letters exchanged. She kept her voice steady in every conversation. The world thought she was strong, but strength wasn't what kept her calm, it was closure. One evening, she went to the study again. Dust had already begun to gather on the desk. The faint imprint of his laptop still marked the wood. She ran her fingers across it, tracing the outline of where his hands once rested. For a moment, she felt a flicker of the woman she used to be, the one who believed that love could fix anything. Then she let the thought go. She found the hidden camera still sitting behind the frame. When she picked it up, the tiny light blinked, almost like a heartbeat. It had seen everything. The lies, the secrets, the truth. She turned it over in her hand and whispered, "We did it." Outside, rain began to fall, steady and soft. She opened the window and let the air drift in, carrying the smell of wet earth. It was the kind of night that made you believe in new beginnings, quiet and slow. She didn't know where he'd gone, and she didn't need to. The truth had already caught up to him, and she didn't have to chase it. Her revenge wasn't loud or cruel, it was precise. It was justice wrapped in calm patience. In the weeks that followed, people asked her how she managed to stay so composed. She would smile politely and say, "Sometimes silence speaks louder than anger." They didn't understand. They couldn't. The strength she found wasn't in rage. It was in control. In knowing that she had turned his own secrecy against him, that she'd used the same stillness he'd mistaken for weakness to end his deception completely. One night, as she packed a small bag for a trip she'd long postponed, she found the old wedding photo again. The edges were frayed, the smiles still frozen. She looked at it for a long time before sliding it into a drawer. Some memories don't need to be displayed. They just need to rest. When she left the house the next morning, she locked the door gently behind her. The garden glistened under the early light, rain still clinging to the petals. She breathed deeply, the air fresh and unfamiliar. It was strange how peace could feel both heavy and freeing at once. She walked down the path without looking back. The road ahead was quiet, open, and real. No cameras, no secrets, no shadows. Just her. And somewhere, far behind her, the house stood in silence, empty, but finally honest.